All right, welcome to the Kaysville City Planning Commission meeting for June 22nd, 2017. We'll start off with approval of the minutes for May 25.
Those minutes weren't distributed yet.
That's what I was just looking through. I don't remember seeing those.
It would have doubled our pile.
Right, okay.
They're done, they just haven't been reviewed.
In my mind, I thought, I don't think I looked at those.
You would have remembered.
I'm glad I didn't fake it. Oh, yes, I approve.
It's taken a while.
Okay, well,
So should we make a motion that we never look at those minutes?
yes. We'll put that under the 2020 Planning Commission. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 2, a conditional use permit, major home occupation B, group music lessons at 115 East 700 South for Kimberly Holtz.
Ms. Holtz contacted Lyle and stated that she had a conflict tonight and wouldn't be able to make the meeting. Asked us if we could represent her here. She lives in the property outlined here, the address listed. She would like to do music lessons in her home. There's some individual lessons. There's also some group lessons included there. The groups can be as many as 8 children at a time. On some occasions, because these are younger children, sometimes the parents may stay with the children through the lesson. So we do have a little concern with parking. The home is on a cul-de-sac with, as you can see on the map, 4 other driveways coming off the circle. So the street parking is limited. They do have a good driveway that could probably accommodate 4 cars if needed, and there's some other parking short distance away. So we're in review with it. Lyle's recommending approval of this. It does meet all the requirements of the ordinance, limiting the number of students to 8, and then keeping a close eye on the parking. If we start getting complaints, we would address it and make them modify their procedure at that point.
Thank you. So there's a limit of 8 students per class, and there's room for 4 cars in the driveway? Is that just west of the driveway? Just west. So where is that on the?
This one here that's outlined.
Probably stacking right there.
Okay.
There's the room for a couple cars here without disturbing, and then some down the road here.
The next driveway isn't until around down there.
There's no, it's not set that there'll be 8 cars there for every session.
Right.
Probably it would be a rarity that there would be more than 3 or 4.
Andy, it says AM and PM classes. Did she give you any kind of idea of how early and how late?
I did not talk to her, so I can't answer that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And it's not clear, my question was also whether, when it's 45 minutes in length, if there's a 15-minute space between, because that makes a difference when parents are leaving and more parents are coming.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes a very big difference.
We have made that a condition in the past, that the classes be staggered so that traffic doesn't overlap each other.
Yeah.
And is 15 minutes enough time even, I wonder? Does the staff have a sense about that?
15 minutes is usually adequate, yes.
Okay.
We don't really know the hours. I mean, it could start from 8 to 5. That makes a lot of students.
Could go from 5 to 8, which could be problematic in the neighborhood too.
True. Yeah.
We have almost the exact same scenario where I live next door. We are in a cul-de-sac, and next door is a musical business, and she teaches these music classes for groups of children. She teaches a little bit of morning classes for like preschoolers, and then she teaches after-school classes and has more than one class after school, after the next. And we think her business is fantastic. She has a really great business, and people benefit from her classes. It is tricky during those times in the cul-de-sac. If there's other people, children in the cul-de-sac, it's tricky. That's kind of the nature of the cul-de-sac and groups like that, regularly. So
Where she doesn't give the ages of the children either. I mean, if they're 3-year-olds, then for sure the parents are going to be staying there, I would think.
In our neighbor's case, some of them do stay, some of them will go run an errand and come back. But yeah, when it's the little preschoolers, that's when you tend to see the cars staying a little bit.
So Andy, was there any indication of age? Or not really? Because this does not outline that.
Yeah, I believe the ages were fairly young. Thought I read it on here, sorry.
And it just says first year, second year, third year, but I mean,
Yeah,
that doesn't really, that
Doesn't
doesn't
say the
say.
ages, sorry, I thought it did.
I think it could be the impact most likely mitigated if there is a 15-minute gap between classes. That would be what I would definitely recommend, so that there's time for some to leave before the others come. Because it's tricky in the cul-de-sac with that number of size of group.
I think the time between classes and the number of students are really the two conditions that we would just be debating on, number and time. I don't know where we fall on that, but I think those are the only real conditions beyond what.
Well,
Yeah.
does it matter if we do it, does it matter if the classes are not during kind of what would be the rush hours of, I don't know what, if it's 7 to 9 and
I
5
can't
to
imagine, I mean, I'm assuming here, but I can't imagine that it's gonna be, 7 in the morning till 9 in the afternoon, or not, 7 to 9, or from like, say, 5 to 6 or something, or 4 to 6 or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Well, but even at that, you're only looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes
Right.
who are affected by this.
Right.
If it were a road where it's not as cul-de-sac, more people are affected.
Sure, right, yeah, I
So
get that, right.
even at rush hour, you're looking at 5 or 10
I think
trips. I don't know.
I'm not so much concerned about the traffic issue with this and cars
Yeah.
parking and all that as I am. I think if I have an issue, it would be the time frames, because AM and PM is wholly ambiguous. So, I mean, but again, I mean, I'd say we could approve it, and then, if there are issues with, neighborly complaints or, things like that, then, revisit. But it would have been nice if she could have been here, but obviously she's not, so.
I'm personally fine with a 15-minute buffer, 8 students, and not restricting not defining the time frames, whether it's AM or PM. And then, like you said, those are the conditions, and if there's complaints, then we can readdress it. But if there's not, then we know we're fine.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at, so.
it's fine with me. Do you want to make a motion, or someone else want to discuss?
Lorraine, go for it.
It sounds great to me. I'll be happy to make this, to create the motion. I move that we grant a conditional use permit for major home occupation B, group music lessons for Kimberly Hulse at 115 East, 700 South, with the condition that no class has more than 8 students and that there is a 15-minute window between classes.
Second.
Aye.
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 Great. Next is a preschool at 1284 West White Horse Circle for Nicole Taylor.
This is somewhat similar preschool. This property's way out west. You can see the property highlighted here. It's also on a cul-de-sac street, although it's not on the cul-de-sac. Standard preschool. I believe they're doing just one class a day, one on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the other on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They've listed the times from 9 to noon for both those. Typically with a preschool where preschool, it's recommended we limit the number of students to 12. They do have a big circular driveway that would allow easy pickup and drop off. Generically with the preschool, there's not the parents staying with the children, so the cars come for 5 minutes, when it starts and 10 minutes when it ends, and seems to be plenty of access and availability here. I believe Ms. Taylor is here if there are questions, and the staff would recommend approval with that 12 student limit.
So in the description, is Miss Bybee, is that a?
That's a typo.
That's a typo, okay. All right, just checking. Do you want to stand for your 15 minutes of fame? So well, just one thing. Some home occupations in that have signage. Do you plan on having any kind of signage or anything?
No.
Nothing, okay.
Nope. It's just word of mouth.
Got it.
Do you need to be licensed through the state, or do they approve the premises, or?
I think the fire code will come and make sure it's all up to fire code. And then I'm all licensed through the state, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I think this one's a little different in the better way from the last one, in the sense that there's not the dropping off and picking up, or, yeah, dropping off and picking up exchange.
Yeah, it's a one.
It's just a one-time deal.
Right.
And it's even more so out of the way in terms of the number of people that it affects. Well, I guess you, down Ruche Lane, it might affect people, but I'm fine with the recommendation and the reasoning in the staff report.
I am too.
Was that a motion?
Sounded like one.
I will make a motion that we grant a conditional use permit for a major home occupation B preschool to Nicole Taylor at 1284 West White Horse Circle.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Aye, and good luck.
Thank you.
And I think, just to clarify, based on what was recommended in the staff report is what I was saying. Is that what everyone was voting on? Okay.
Oh, the limitation of students, yeah.
Which, yeah, so 12 per
12.
class.
So,
class.
yeah, in the 3-year-old class, there's 10.
Okay.
And then in the 4-year-old class, there's 12.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
There seems to be a great demand for preschools in Kaysville, by the way.
yes, there's, well, and Miss Penny, who, Canterbury Preschool, she reached there.
Oh, nice. So people need a place.
Preschool right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, good times.
nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next is item number 3, conditional use permit for a public utility substation located at 1355 South Sunset Drive for CenturyLink.
Properties highlighted here on the map, down on Sunset Drive, just south of Western Drive. The request is for CenturyLink to put in additional cabinets. When the request was received, there was one cabinet on the property. They would like to put in additional cabinets. Actually, when I went out to inspect the site, he found that one had already been installed. They contacted CenturyLink and they apologized. So this is the existing cabinet here. The request is to put this additional cabinet, and this one that you see still on a pallet would go off to the side of that one. We've just traditionally done, if there's more than one in a location of this type of size, we run it through a conditional use and see if there's any additional mitigating factors that need to be considered. In this case, we wouldn't recommend any. It means that they would probably be a bigger, make it more noticeable rather than less noticeable. These are frequent throughout town. They're kind of necessary in today's world, but just to make sure they are appropriate and fit, they run through the conditional use process, so it's before you tonight.
When does the city anticipate developing that side of Sunset, number 1, and number 2? Is this anticipated to just go into the park strip then?
That's where it should be placed, is in the park strip, yes.
And so wherever it's sitting right now is, in terms of the right-of-way dimensions and things, it's planned for the park strip?
Yes.
Does C-Link have they don't have a representative here, do they? No.
I don't see one.
My question to them would have been, well, actually it is, So these cool ped structures, this is essentially an air conditioner. It's an environmental unit. And the only concern that I have with this is the noise, because this thing does cycle, I'm assuming. If it's like, I mean, I work in this industry kind of, so, I mean, I'm kind of familiar with this. So, I mean, it's essentially a small air conditioning unit, compressor and condenser, and it'll cycle to cool the equipment. So, I mean, obviously that's noise. Is that something that's going to be mitigated somehow, or between a certain time frame or whatever?
How loud is it?
Fairly loud. I mean, it's a
Like lawnmower loud or less?
No, probably the sound of, well, I guess really it's probably not going to be that big of an issue then, because it's probably no louder than a residential HVAC unit, so,
Okay.
But anyway, just a point to ponder, so.
I hadn't thought about the sound, but, and I understand what the staff says about wondering whether you add something that to camouflage or hide it makes it look worse, but I don't see how it's going to look worse than that. I mean, that to me does not look, that doesn't look good to me. Especially with Sunset going to have some increased.
What if you paint it?
Camouflage it maybe.
Is the unit sitting on like the wooden crate, is that?
The wood will go away and they pour a cement pad.
Oh, so that's the unit that's going to sit on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you said that one is already there and the other two will be going up?
This one has been there for some time, and these two are
Those two are the
proposed
ones.
Yeah, this would set back in line with the other two.
So the bigger one on the right is leaving. Is that, no.
Oh, it's
Staying.
staying.
Is that, okay.
So it's
all
going to
right.
be a
It's just
whole
in
lineup
addition
of.
to.
There'll be 3 total when it's
Okay, all
done.
right.
And is that the configuration, or is the one on the pallet going to be
No,
something
the one on the pallet will be moved back in line with the other two back in this vicinity.
Is this homeowner here?
Apparently, apparently they don't care.
They're not admitting to it, so.
No, okay.
These-
All right, well, I mean, I just thought, if that homeowner was really concerned about it, then they might want to be here, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
This was noticed, the sign was put up in front of these, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the homeowner, I mean, if I were the homeowner, I'd be concerned, but I'm also concerned just with general aesthetics. I remember one of my first planning commission meetings, there was something like this, and I let it go, and I've regretted. It seems like there's a lot of this stuff around that makes it look junky.
There's been one in my time as well, and we had quite a discussion about it.
Yeah.
up
Well, there
on-
was one on Mutton Hollow over by the trailer park.
Yeah,
that-
there was.
Yeah.
That I don't think we did anything about, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't like it. I mean, maybe I just need to come to grips with the fact that if we put something up, it makes it look worse. But again, that to me looks pretty.
Now I believe that if you just tried to fence that in, I agree that it would look worse. There may be some way to plant natural looking, bush or something.
Yeah.
that may partially
I think
hide it
that's
from at
actually
least one
listed.
direction or
I
another.
do think it's kind of like, it's the idea of like, if you do something, then you notice it. If you don't do something to it, you just don't notice it.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's been there for a while.
And yeah, the fact that we know that this neighborhood is capable of coming out en masse. And so the fact that no one's here, I guess, says that maybe no one really notices it. But let me be more specific on a question I asked earlier. So if I understand correctly, the city is of their own accord developing or improving portions of 200 North, right?
Yes.
And the west portion. So is the city anticipating doing that on this stretch of Sunset, or are they waiting for the adjacent properties to develop?
City is currently looking at, in fact, we've initiated some design so that when the funding becomes available, we'll be ready to proceed on it. It seems to be a fairly high priority.
Yeah.
On
And
Sunset.
and that's not necessarily just the curb and gutter, it's improving the
The
full right-of-way?
Driving surface, yeah, for
Yeah.
better sidewalk.
Right.
Thankfully, these are already placed in a spot that's conducive to growth and to development, which is nice.
But are we restricted by the dimensions of a park strip which looks about the size of this, how much landscaping could you get around this in the width of a park strip?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
You could put something maybe on either side of it or something, maybe something behind it, but then that's leaving the front exposed, which is essentially what's viewed from the road. So, yeah, I guess the bad thing with these is, as much as I hate to say it, you know, everybody loves high-speed internet, everybody loves talking on the telephone, everybody loves, you know, all that. I mean, it's a necessary evil, just like cell towers too. I mean, it's, you know, not in my backyard, but golly, I sure do love streaming movies on my iPhone. So, you know, it's one of those things that it's kind of hard to step away from. So, but I do agree with the aesthetics, so.
So the one that's already there is whitish, right? Do they ever have green ones? Wouldn't a green?
Yeah, they do have green. They're all over the city.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
don't see 'em
thought.
one day.
Well, we
Typically,
have,
power boxes are green, and
We have a green power
telecommunications tend
box.
to use the white.
okay, yeah, we have a green power box on our property in that cul-de-sac, and at least it's green, and we do have plants around it, you know? So I almost wish that there was a green option here too.
Are you saying that it's like, could get confusing from just an industry standard perspective?
I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
It's just the way they make them.
You better know what your stuff looks like when you're playing in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Gee, this doesn't look like the diagram I was given.
Just go for it.
Kind of like a rooster.
I mean, I've said before, I struggle with this, but it seems like to me, this is a industry with a lot of smart people in it, and they can figure out ways to make it look better. And even the color is, I think, is an easy choice, and my inclination would be to put the onus on them to come up with some suggestions that make sense. In the times past, we've said, oh, can you do it? And they say, well, it's kind of hard. And we say, oh, okay. If it's hard, then don't try. And these guys, you know, they're big enough to be able to figure something out, I think. But
What
of course
about
they aren't.
xeriscaping around it? At least putting a boulder over by the pole or something. and
White
then-
rock,
Yeah, do a xeriscape
And
of some
some-
kind and then put natural plants on the outside of the rock formations.
So maybe we could add that in our motion, I'm sure, that they, you know, xeriscape it and they put some, you know, zero maintenance.
Consider color and
Yeah,
maybe work with
consider
the staff.
color, work with the staff. Can we kick it, can we do that? Can we have CenturyLink work with you? So I think.
I think that's a good idea for 3 in a row units,
Yeah.
but the
where
thing
it's
about it-
going to get nicer, we hope, in the area in the
Yeah.
future.
But you know, I will say this, though, that these are all over the city. This isn't some one-off that, you know, I mean, it's because we're so used to seeing them.
Well, okay, so there's a test. How many would you're in the industry, I guess tangentially, it sounds like. How many would you guess of these are in the city? Just ballpark, order of magnitude.
A couple of dozen.
Okay.
At every intersection.
No, not every.
The only ones I can name, the only one I could name before this was the one on Mount Hollow, because we looked at it here.
Right.
I can't name any others.
No, because they.
So I don't
you're just-
notice them.
Right.
I mean,
You're
so,
just driving along.
so there's part of that too. It's like,
Probably if you lived right there, that's where you would notice it.
that's
If you lived
true.
right there, if you were walking those roads.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, I also think there's a level, part of this is raising the level of aesthetics in the city.
Sure, and we can hold them to that, I think, by making a motion
Yeah.
that states, you know, that's conducive to that too, so. But, so if that's the case,
Well, for me, one of the issues is having 3 in a row. I think we don't see them because it's one off, it's just a little bump and you're past it like that, but you create a wall
Right.
between these 2 driveways, you're almost literally creating a wall between the driveways
right.
that
Too bad.
will stand out.
And the tricky thing about doing a little aesthetic work is something, because they're not going to maintain it, right? They're not going to maintain that little area.
Well, they
so
should, but you're right, you're right.
Whatever, if we want to be specific about what we think needs the least maintenance to stay looking nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can say to them, I mean, you know, do something that requires minimal maintenance, or that's something they'll be able to maintain.
Right.
I mean, you know, rocks and stuff don't need to be watered, so.
No, and keep, you know, color.
Just the weeds coming up through the rocks is awful, 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 awful.
I would guess, though, they probably wouldn't maintain that much.
No, they wouldn't.
And it would fall to the property owner because it's in the park strip, or will be.
think, though, had they turned them around so that they accessed them from the backside, then plants could have been planted and they move them out.
These probably open on both sides, buddy.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if the picture is,
Well, that one there probably doesn't, but that bigger one there on the right, I'm sure that there's access on both sides.
Yeah.
But it's probably right on the edge of the park strip.
Probably.
It needed to be moved out a little, then it would have been impeded traffic, so.
Right. So,
No,
but I'm comfortable with making a motion that states, like I said, that states the aesthetics and for CenturyLink to work with staff and to, you know, address those concerns, so.
I think do it and consider color. I thought that was a good
Yeah,
idea.
okay.
Larry.
So I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for a public utility substation for CenturyLink Communications, Arlene Denny at 1355 South Sunset Drive, with the stipulations that aesthetics, environmental aesthetics, i.e. landscaping, xeriscaping, things along those lines are considered, as well as color of cabinet and the exterior color of the cabinets, and CenturyLink can then in turn work with Kaysville City staff.
I would maybe just clarify, I would prefer not to see like fencing around it. I think that would.
Yeah, without,
Well, the staff-
yeah,
that's
without
the way the
fencing
staff
around,
feels,
yeah,
right?
yeah, me too.
Okay, so, okay, yeah.
So there you have it.
I'll second that.
Okay. Aye.
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 Great. I thought that was well done. Thank you. Okay, next. Item number 5. Let's see, is this 4? Is that what it is? Excuse me. Preliminary and final plat for amendments to lots 26 and 27 of West Creekside Estate subdivision for Robert Campbell and Christopher Barrett, 140 and 118 South, 2300 West.
This is pretty straightforward. The property's highlighted here at the end of the cul-de-sac, down by the new elementary school on the bottom of 200 North and the West Creekside Estates. The request is to just modify the common property line between those two lots. We zoom in on the existing property. You can see the faded line that runs diagonal across here. That is the existing line. They would like to move it, go this way, traded the same square footage of property. Both property owners have agreed to that. It actually works better for both of them, gives this guy a little more frontage and access to his backyard, this guy a little more backyard. They're both happy with it and have requested that this amended plat be approved. We do need to open a public hearing.
Right, we'll open the public hearing for this matter. Is there anyone here that would like to address this item? Nope. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
I think we've asked this question on previous similar applications, and it seems like the answer is that state law plays into the answer, but why can't we do this at a staff level?
Just because we haven't done the ordinance that accommodates it.
Okay. Do you think it would make sense, would the staff prefer something as minimal as a lot line adjustment like this to stay at staff level, or does the city want it to be here?
I don't have a problem with doing it as a staff level, because again, this is very simple. It appears to have no impact to anybody other than the two requesting property owners.
Right.
And they both want it. Yeah.
They both have requested it. Well, they both have to, or else it can't be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm having a hard time thinking of how that would negatively affect surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, I think it has to be a very narrow set of circumstances, but when it fits the narrow definition, whatever that ended up being, like this one should,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it necessarily needs to come before us because we're just gonna rubber stamp it, is my guess, but.
And then they're making that judgment call, and then sometimes somebody would think it was a little larger and probably should have come.
I think it's certainly worth looking at.
Yeah.
I think you could work on something that would say, along the lines of what you said, it doesn't impact anyone else. And if
And,
that's the case, then,
yeah, and in the rare exception, if and when it did, anytime somebody disagrees with staff's decision on anything that's within the staff's purview, there's an appeal process.
right.
That's
So,
correct.
How would they get notice of that if we didn't have it, a public hearing?
There's several ways that it could be set up and done.
Maybe appear, show up if you have a problem, otherwise it's gonna go through, kind of thing?
Generically, on the state level, they require a land use authority for all the various land use decisions that need to be made. And so each item doesn't have to go to the same body. For example, you are the authority on conditional use permits, but on subdivisions, it has to go to the city council. There are certain items that we just do handle as staff. So this could be defined and delegated to a staff level decision, whether they do it just on a over-the-counter decision or actually hold a public meeting to review them, just as the land use authority for lot line adjustments, which could still be noticed and held as a formal meeting during normal working hours, and people could have the opportunity to come in and,
No?
yeah.
Well, I think that's, do you want a motion from the planning commission to consider that, or do you feel like you have enough direction?
you can just direct us on that.
All right. Should we take a motion on this one then, or what are we here?
Yeah, so we're just making a motion on this as a standalone, correct?
Yeah.
I'll move that we grant a preliminary and final plat approval for lots 26 and 27 of West Creekside Estate subdivision for Mr. Robert Campbell and Mr. Christopher Barrett at respectively 140 and 118 South, 2300 West.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next is final plat approval of the Ray subdivision located 1120 West Webb Lane for Bonnie Ray.
We looked at this recently. This property's on Webb Lane, just west of Flint Street, fairly large parcel there. The preliminary plat came through with request to actually do 3 lots. There's an existing home on the property now. The original request came in to do a flag lot, create 2 more lots. So they looked at that. Their final plat came in just as 2 lots, the existing home and a new lot to the east. They've laid this out so that the 3rd lot could be platted in the future if they decided they chose to go that way, but at this point, they would just like to put in the 2 lots. The improvements are already along the street. There's not any real additions to this, so this is a 2-lot subdivision, which we'd recommend for approval.
Thank you.
So if I remember right, she was saying that this was going to be given to her family, her children or something.
That's correct.
Has she indicated that there is going to be building on Lot 2 in the near future? Is that the idea?
I think that's the intent, is to build a new home. I think as I recall, that was for one of her children or something that intended to build there at this point.
Yeah. I don't have any problems or questions.
No, I don't either.
Looks good. Take a motion for final plat approval.
So I'll move that we recommend final plat approval for the Meadows, final plat at, I'm just getting ahead of myself, for the Ray subdivision at 1120 West Webb Lane.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay. Next is the final plat approval for the Meadows at Webb Lane subdivision. Jerry Preston representing John Progress and Jonathan Fairbanks at 1191 and 1223 West Webb Lane.
We reviewed this preliminary plat a couple months ago as well. This is the property highlighted here on Webb Lane. A couple homes are existing in the front with large properties to the back. Proposal is to run a cul-de-sac in between the homes, plenty of room. They still meet all the setback requirements. Established lots there. All the lots conform to the R120 zoning with the frontage and the square footage. The final plat's very much consistent with the preliminary plat. The engineering's in good order, so we're to recommend final plat approval for this project as well.
Okay.
So there are, from what I can see, there's no major deviations at all from the
No, I think
preliminary to
it's
final.
virtually identical, just the detail added.
Okay.
I move that we recommend final plat approval for the Meadows subdivision, Meadows at Webb Lane subdivision.
For all the people.
All of them and at that location.
There you go. Wow, so efficient of you. I second that.
Wait, right here to the record. Okay, take a second.
I'll second. Aye.
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 Okay.
For said applicant at said location.
Next is final plat for the Anglers Cove subdivision consisting of 3 lots on 1.66 acres for Brock Johnson at 373 East Shepherd Lane.
We reviewed the preliminary plat at this not too long ago as well. This is the property just off Shepherd Lane on 350 East Street. Existing home near the corner. Request is to divide it and create a couple lots to the north. The preliminary plat indicated that. This was rezoned to R1 LD, which allows just for 2 units per acre. The front lot would maintain approximately an acre. The back two are about well over 1/3 of an acre, about 16,500 square feet. So there's not a huge deviation. The frontage is the same as if it was an R120.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Requested by them there.
All right, is there any discussion?
Nope, looks good. I'll move that we grant final plat for Anglers Cove subdivision consisting of 3 lots on 1.66 acres for Mr. Brock Johnson at 373 East Shepherd Lane.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay, call to the public. We have one public left. Do you have anything you'd like to say? Okay. Great. Okay, we'll close the call to the public. Are there any matters?
He was just the last item on the agenda, so he stayed along.
I think you showed up last as well. That was very efficient of you, too. Way to go. Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Calendar, reports. Actually get an extra week off. There's 5 weeks, 5 Thursdays in June, so
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at June or July
July
13th.
13th. Wow,
The year is moving along.
that sure is.
All right.
I move we adjourn.